I've clicked onto the Global Tropical Review for October the 4th, October the 5th in Taiwan, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, let this expect your mind alone, and when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we've had quite a lot happen over the past day with Typhoon Koinu. This is what we're just going to be starting off with. I'm going to go over Philippe in just a moment. If you're just looking for that, you can skip ahead to that. I'll leave a timestamp. But Koinu is the main story today, as this system has really intensified impressively in the face of some still significant wind shear impacting the system. You can see that the system overall on satellite does not look overly impressive, but observations are, and we've had some buoys go through the eye, an eye wall, and now we have an observation station and I forget the name of the island, just off the coastline of southern Taiwan, but they've got significant pressure falls. I think it's a bit elevated, but the pressure on the station is at like 907, 908 millibars, very significant, and that translates to, I believe, about in low 930s for pressure overall. Very significant storm, and the winds are likely at that Cat 4 threshold if you're going off a Saffir-Simpson scale. But either way, this is a strong typhoon, and this will be making landfall later today, local time, in southern Taiwan, most likely. Or the center of the eye might just barely miss, but just looking at the current trajectory, it does look like a landfall is going to occur. This is a radar composite out of Taiwan, and you can see this large eye associated with it. And you can see it generally taking this track towards southern Taiwan. And the main concern really for Taiwan here is this eye wall, which could have winds in excess of 100 knots. And also heavy rainfall coming right into the high topography of the island. And this, you can see all the rainfall coming in, streaming towards the mountains, and that can lead to a lot of flooding issues. And we've already seen so many of storms come through here and cause flooding issues. It's been a very active typhoon season here, and unfortunately, here we are yet again having a tropical cyclone come through here. This is just a map of the radar, but also showing the weather station. I believe it's Lanyu Island. If I mispronounced that, I apologize, but you can see if I zoom in here, it's very small text. Maybe if I hover over it, I think it did for a second there. Yeah, you can see the pressure is about 908 millibars. Now this is elevated, like I said, so the pressure at the surface is actually a little bit higher than this, probably roughly 20 millibars higher, but either way, that just shows how intense this system is, and it just shows how looks can be deceiving in some storms like this. This does not look like a Category 4, really, if you look at satellite estimates, but certainly with the observations that we've had, we have a very powerful typhoon coming through here. This was a microwave pass way earlier today. We don't have a more recent one, but you can just see the very strong nature of the core, especially on the southern side. The northern side was a bit weaker. There are some things still impacting Koinu internally. We do still have some easterly shear coming in. You can see this streaming here. If you look below the outflow layer, we have some clouds streaming towards the west, towards the storm. But also on the northern side, the outflow is heavily restricted. You can see a lot of this upper level cirrus on the northern side. It tries to come north, but it just gets stopped, indicating that it's very restricted. Really, the only outflow channel it has is this one to the south, though that one looks pretty healthy, at least. Maybe a little bit restricted on the eastern side here, thanks to this easterly shear still impinging the storm. Now, after the system passes through Taiwan, the system will likely be making its way towards China, primarily towards Hong Kong in general. But the good news is we're not expecting the system to intensify really significantly after Taiwan. The expectation is that the system after Taiwan will gradually weaken, not gradually, maybe rapidly weaken on approach to the coastline. A main reason being that this system will, of course, be interacting with the high topography of Taiwan, and that can certainly interrupt the inner core structure and may have to rebuild itself quite a bit after it comes off. But also, with the higher topography, the system, once it's west of Taiwan, it will be pulling winds downsloping or downstream of the mountains. So you'll get some downsloping taking shape, which means you get some flow coming down the mountains, and you get drier air then being pulled into the circulation, and that can get entrained into the center. And if that gets right into the eye, or the center of circulation, whichever is left after Taiwan, that can certainly disrupt it quite a bit, and that may, alongside the land interaction and having to trying to rebuild its core, absolutely lead to it really not strengthening too much. And the general forecast seems to be for most models of weakening. You can see the GFS generally weakens it on approach to the coastline of China just from the aspects that I mentioned there. But it could still be, say a strong tropical storm, maybe a typhoon by the time it comes into China. So make sure you do stay tuned to your local weather office and the Japan Meteorological Agency for that information ahead of the storm. But after that, really, the storm is forecast to really just move in and dissipate, and then we'll move our eyes onto what's next in the West Pacific. We're not going to talk about that today, but there might be some development taking shape near the Mariana Islands, and we'll talk about that in due time when it's necessary. All right, so that's Typhoon Koinu. We're now going to move to the Atlantic as we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Philippe, and this has just been a weird storm to track overall. If you remember last time I made a video, the expectation was that the system was going to come, and I'll go to the zoomed out water vapor loop to show this better. It was forecast to come through or very close to the Leeward Islands and then recurve into the central Atlantic, maybe become a hurricane, and then recurve harmlessly away east of Bermuda, east of the US, and we weren't expecting any significant impacts. However, there was a caveat there. If the system still remained weak, it could absolutely have still tracked further west, and that is what we had. The system has just struggled so much in the face of the wind shear that it's been dealing with that this system has continued to trend west. And you can see now the center is now just about north of Puerto Rico, and we've had significant impacts being brought all along the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. That's including tropical storm force winds and heavy rainfall. And that heavy rainfall has also led to some flooding issues across the islands. But this was certainly more unforecast, I suppose, for Philippe. And this storm just has a habit of not wanting to come north. But its time not coming north is coming to an end. You can see now it does have more of a northerly component to its motion, and now the system is coming north. And you can see in that water vapor loop all this streaming southerly flow. This is going to help it turn towards the north, or more so just come further north. It's already turned north, but now because the system is further west, we are looking at impacts in Bermuda, and now even Atlantic Canada, and potentially the northeastern United States. This is a 200 millibar flow from the GFS, and I'll actually go to the 500 millibar flow chart first so I can show you all what had happened in more detail on what exactly kept our storm coming further west rather than taking that track out to sea. So when I made my video a couple days ago, and I can probably go back to it, you can see that Philippe was here southeast of the Leeward Islands. We had a developing ridge to the north. This was going to keep it tracking west, and the idea was that Philippe was going to strengthen a little bit and come north and get caught by this developing trough, which would, in relation to this ridge, help the system recurve into the central Atlantic and come out to sea and potentially become a hurricane there. Now, the system, as I mentioned, struggled in the face of shear, so the system really did not feel this flow all too much. It was so weak that it really just felt the low-level flow, which the low-level flow in this case has mostly just been westerly, kicking the storm back towards the west. And now, eventually, now the system has come north. You can see here it's north on the model. It's north of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. But the trough that was here to pick the system up is now all the way up here northwest of the Azores. So it missed its chance. Now, the good news is part of this trough was splitting towards the southwest. You can see we have this part of the trough and this little cutoff flow here over the Bahamas. Now, this low alongside this ridge to the east, these are going to carry the system north. This is a general funneling action that you're seing here with the ridge trying to pull it north and this low trying to pull it north. So that's why we have now high confidence that the system is actually going to come north and not trend further west, potentially into the Turks and Caicos and Bahamas. The system simply can't go west now, just given this low being here. Now, alongside the system now missing this trough, it also means that it's not here in the central Atlantic anymore. We're now way down here by Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So now this system is going to come north, and rather than being in the central Atlantic and getting stuck here, it's now going to come north. And once this ridge up here over the northeast and the Atlantic Canada comes east, this system is now going to just sort of bend back towards the west, similarly in a fashion that Lee did last month, and go towards Atlantic Canada as it interacts with this low and another trough digging in over the United States. And you'll see that play out. You can see here comes Philippe now coming north pretty quickly on the model. You can see it coming near Bermuda, interacting with this low. And now here's our ridge now coming east. And this trough is digging in over the Great Lakes. This trough and this upper level low are really just going to combine. And you'll also see that eventually Philippe is just going to merge with this trough. And you can see now, here's Philippe on the model coming into Nova Scotia. Now, this would promote some strengthening. I can show you that on the 200 millibar flow chart. You can see as Philippe comes north, there's a lot more divergence aloft. You can see that from this trough. This will promote some strengthening, but we're not expecting this to be very significant overall. And really, this strengthening looks to be more atmospherically supported, more so than oceanic. But I'm sure some oceanic conditions will be favoring it a little bit here. But the system, once it comes up towards Atlantic Canada and the Northeast, it will be by that time merged with this upper level trough that you can on the 500 millibar flow. And by then, it will no longer be a tropical cyclone. It will just be a non-tropical cyclone racing up here with some potentially strong winds, potentially upwards of 50 knots or 60 miles per hour. And you can see that here on the National Hurricane Center forecast cone with this general track northwards here coming very close to Bermuda. Tropical storm watch is in place now. And then after that, as we get towards the weekend, coming up and racing into Nova Scotia and potentially Maine as a non-tropical cyclone. But winds here as well could be, as I said, upwards of 50 knots or 60 miles per hour. And as always, with areas of low pressure coming in, you could have some coastal flooding issues. Though the good news is the system should be moving pretty quickly, so the impacts are probably not going to be, as severe as they could be if the system was, say, coming in more slowly like Lee did last month. But that's all that I've got for today. There's a lot going on in the tropics and a lot more to come as the tropics, especially in the Pacific, seem to be waking up. And I'll have future uploads later this week on a lot of those systems. But stay safe in Taiwan as Koinu moves through. Hopefully the damage that comes from this storm is not nearly as bad as typically comes with Category 4 storms, but certainly a very powerful storm coming through. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.